Every once in a while a game surprises you. I feel like with the more games you play, the less often this seems to occur. You often know what to expect with games of a certain genre, art style, and also begin to notice certain storytelling patterns over time. Evans Remains was one of these surprising games for me. Not all surprises are good though, so let's take a look to see if this game was a good surprise or one that left me feeling a little off. Evans Remains is a puzzle platformer developed by Mytan69. It was released in 2020 for PC, PS4, Xbox One, and Nintendo Switch. Evans Remains costs $6.99 at full price on all platforms at the time of this video. It is rated E10, as it doesn't really have anything too objectionable, although it does go into some heavy themes over the course of the game. Evans Remains is one of those games that if you talk too much about the story, you'll be in heavy spoiler territory. The setup of the game is that you play as a young woman named Dices, who is tasked with finding a genius named Evan on an uninhabited island. That's really all you're given at the start. Dices doesn't know Evan, and was simply hired by a company to find him and bring him back. This is also set in the future, as you see all kinds of futuristic technology being used over the course of the game. As you explore this island, more of the story is uncovered and travels in some unexpected directions. There is some pretty big twists and turns during the story that I just didn't really see coming. While the narrative twists were quite surprising, the overall story just left me feeling a bit unsatisfied, maybe even a little unsettled by the end of it all. The story by the end raises a handful of very interesting moral questions, but at the same time, it all feels a bit hollow or too surfacey, or I don't know, something just seems off about it. I guess if you like narratives that have twists that are surprising, this could be for you. However, if you prefer your narratives to be more satisfying than surprising, this is probably not going to be your favorite story. It's not that I hated the story or anything, it was executed fairly well. It just really didn't go in an enjoyable direction for me and left me feeling more mixed on it than I expected from the setup at the beginning. Evans Remains has pretty simple gameplay. The main controls for your game are only to move and jump. The goal of each puzzle you encounter is also always the same. You're trying to travel from the bottom left of the screen to the top right. The puzzles themselves are focused on different types of blocks that you have to jump on to solve the puzzles. To start with, you are just given a couple types of blocks. Ones that can be platforms but retract into the wall after you jump off of them, and then platforms that would switch the status of these first types of platforms. These switch platforms would retract all platforms that were already out and push out any platform that was in the wall. These blocks are then used in a number of different configurations in order to increase the challenge of these puzzles. Later on, you will also see other blocks that will add new strategies as well. Blocks that allow you to jump higher depending on how far you fall onto it, blocks that cause certain platforms to switch places when you step on them, and others. It should also be noted that for a puzzle platformer game, you're probably going to be spending just as much time in dialogue as you will be solving puzzles, if not more actually. The puzzles aren't particularly challenging, and some story parts of the game can go on for quite some time. Depending on how challenging you like your puzzle games, this may be a good or bad thing for you. I didn't really mind this aspect of it, as I was interested in seeing where the story was going, but that may not be the case for everyone. Overall, I would say that the gameplay was solid, but not amazing. Controls and puzzles were competent, but there isn't a whole lot of challenge in the game. It's all pretty simple. Even if you do get stuck, there is an option that allows you to skip the puzzle, which I only used to get the trophy that required me to use the skip feature. It felt like the focus was much more on the story elements of the game than the puzzles, but I still had fun solving the puzzles as well. I'll be honest, it was definitely the art style that drew me to the game. It's a pixel art style game, but I really enjoyed the way that it looked and the fluidity of the animations. It really had a nice vibe to it with bright, vibrant colors and some chill island themes. If I have any complaint here, it's that the art style doesn't really match the overall tone of the game. I still enjoyed it, but the style can definitely set you up for expecting a bit of a different game than what you'll get. Sound direction of the game just didn't leave much of an impression on me. This largely just means that it was okay. Sound effects were fine, and the music wasn't bad enough to criticize, but neither is this music that you're going to go out of your way to listen to. Evans Remains wasn't exactly what I was expecting, but that wasn't fully a bad thing. I was expecting an easy little puzzle platformer with some chill vibes and nice pixel art. It was mostly this, but the story didn't quite have the chill vibes that I was expecting. I didn't expect a story with this level of complexity that would leave you with some moral issues to wrestle with and maybe a bad taste in your mouth. This surprise wasn't necessarily bad, but I just didn't really enjoy the place that the story wound up landing. It was interesting in and surprising, but also unsatisfying. The gameplay is also pretty simple, and while some puzzles can make you think a bit to get the answer, they aren't typically too hard. All things considered, I'm rating Evans Remains a 7 out of 10. It's not a bad game by any means, but it's also not a particularly great one either. The most enjoyable thing about it is the story and the surprise way everything comes together. How much you enjoy this ending will probably influence how much you enjoy the game. Even then though, the game still has some pretty simple gameplay and probably won't be anyone's absolute favorite game of all time. I at least know that it wasn't mine.